Cool. How's your week been, Andrew?
Excellent.
Good.
Yeah, literally very good. Up until the point I just went ice skating in the restroom. So that was good fun. So there was basically just a huge kind of. I was put in a position I haven't been in for many years, to be fair. So that's why just a tiny bit flustered. And that's why we're just a bit late there. But other than that, the week's been actually good. Yeah, busy. As always, which is a positive sign. So I think the market is still kind of busy, which is positive, I think. So yeah, how's your week been?
Yeah, pretty similar actually. There's a lot going on. So it's funny. I had a call with someone today, and the first thing she said was, and she's like us, she's been here forever, so she's been in Dubai for about 20 years, and she goes, "How are things?" Because she goes, I just have got no time to breathe at the moment. It just feels so busy. And I said to her, I was like, honestly, my kind of litmus test of busy and if things are potentially good in Dubai is if I'm getting stuck in traffic. And yesterday, I don't brave it out of the house too often, but yesterday I was stuck on Hester Street at about 4:15, which was
Perfect.
that normal kind of rush of, I'm going to get on Hester Street before everyone else does rush.
That's right.
Yeah, which was really interesting. So that was a good sign. It was that. In all fairness, I think it was probably the first time I've been happy to be stuck in Hester Street traffic, because it's a sign of positivity that there's people in Dubai doing stuff, right?
That's it. Excellent. Yeah, get a chance to listen to another podcast.
Exactly. Yeah. So it was good. It was So pretty positive actually, but yeah, all good. So, what's the time? Let's have a look. About 5 past. Okay, cool. Shall we crack on, Andrew? I think we've got quite a lot to kind of cover. Yeah,
we have, as usual. It's kind of, we look at our notes and we say, well, okay, are we going to get time? Is there enough time? Is it going to go too quick? But I think we've got quite a lot to go through. So probably best to kind of kick off, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just before we start, I'm seeing some new faces, or some new names at least. So guys, if it's the first time you're joining the show, welcome. Great to have you here. How the show works is that it's very interactive. So if you do have any questions along the way, anything that you want to ask, use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. There's also a little chat function. But yeah, feel free to engage with any of those. We'll tackle those as we go along. If there's anything that's really kind of urgent, I think there's a kind of raise hand button that you have there. Feel free to use that. So guys, any questions?
You panicked people then, Amit, where you said, I've seen new faces, and people are like, hold on, you can't see me. My camera's off. I'm here in my pants, but no, don't worry, we can't see you.
No, I'm sorry. I realised as soon as I said it. Fantastic. Okay, cool. So, we had a few emails. I think once our kind of email went out yesterday, which was the name of this episode, and it's funny. It's kind of, I guess it's a time of the year that we both kind of look forward to for many reasons. But obviously, the name of the episode was the "Why Aren't We in Vegas" episode, and I know that confused a whole load of people, because we got a few emails saying, are you guys in Vegas? We're like, no, we're not. Well, what does it mean then? I was like, okay, we'll kind of explain. It's a bit of an in-joke. And then I realized actually, if we're launching a kind of webinar and podcast with an in-joke, that's probably not the smartest thing to do. But hey, we've still got people rocking up and watching the show, so we'll take it. We'll take it as a positive. But yeah, Andrew, tell anyone who's kind of intrigued as to why we called the show what we have today. Where are we normally, and why aren't we there right now?
Yeah. So genuinely, usually we are at this point either in Vegas or on the back of a trip, climbing back on a plane after getting no sleep for 4 days, and that really just became a bit of a tradition from going to Inbound. So Inbound is the kind of largest event in Inbound and pretty much marketeers' calendar for the year. So last year, 27,000 people at the event. We've been going for the last 6-7 years, is it? 6 or 7 years. So the event's held in Boston, where HubSpot, you've heard us speak about HubSpot before on this show, if you kind of go back and watch some of the previous episodes, or you've tuned in to watch our previous ones. So we usually go to this huge marketing event, sales and marketing event, spread over kind of 4 days. Real full day sessions, interactive sessions across a whole load of tracks. So not just HubSpot and inbound focused, but also just everything associated to the world of marketing and sales. So it's something that has been in the calendar, and what we've done in the previous years is, because it's Boston and Vegas is really close to Boston, it's a kind of quick 7-hour flight. We've just taken that opportunity to kind of blow off some steam after a 4-day dive. And I think the thing is, we look forward to it because, it's 4 days of learning. It's just 4 days of taking in knowledge and then kind of digesting that, and then, kind of bit of a brain overload, and then kind of a blow off of steam, and then come back and then see how you can start to apply some of this knowledge and knowledge transfer to the team at Nexa, and then ultimately, obviously, from a client perspective. So, with COVID, still swinging, the decision was made to kind of migrate it to an online event, and then the decision was to scale back the event, so it was 2 days as opposed to the 4, and obviously that was last week as well. That's basically why we find ourselves both in Dubai, different parts of Dubai today, but that's why we find ourselves here as opposed to somewhere else, let's say. But again, as you said, in-jokes are a bit of a challenge when it comes to a global show.
So I mean, look, what's really interesting is obviously, the event itself. I think why we enjoy it is because it really does focus on sales and marketing, as opposed to just a marketing show or a sales show.
Yes.
And I think for those of you who I think we've been talking about it a lot on these shows, but on this show, sorry, but everyone kind of talks a lot about kind of marketing and sales alignment, how sales and marketing now shouldn't really be separated into 2 different silos, how these should be really kind of integrated. And then if you integrate, you get better results. And there's a lot of research, a lot of studies about this. I think what HubSpot have been very smart at is to say, okay, well, cool, we get this, and therefore let's have a sales and marketing conference combined and merged into one, which is the reason why we need perhaps 4 days when most conferences are perhaps 2 or 3 days. But in those 4 days, there's going to be so much content, so much information, and so much knowledge transfer, as you quite rightly said, that's going to be shared. And I think why we look forward to it is because obviously, we're not a marketing focused agency, I guess. We do a lot of kind of sales work, a lot of CRM work. And when you have, an opportunity for 4 days of kind of intense learning. And again, we're learning from some of the best kind of speakers in the world. And again, and the reason that happens is, again, like you said, the magnitude of the event. I think when we first went, 10,000 people was perhaps a struggle for them. Actually, I think it was about 7,000, and suddenly went to 10,000, and that jump from 7 to 10 was a real. I think they almost didn't expect it. But since then, it's been absolutely seamless. And the fact they had 20, 25,000, 27,000 last year, and it ran absolutely seamlessly was brilliant, because it meant we can go to whichever sessions that we needed to go to, speak to whoever we needed to speak to, network with whoever we needed to network with. And it's sort of testament. And it was just a massive shame that we couldn't obviously be there this year. Right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, I think the thing was we still had high hopes for this year. Still had kind of strong caliber of speakers, good breakout sessions. But I think the thing is, up until this point, actually, I've kind of been one of those firm believers that the events business would change dramatically, like it has, and I didn't think it would ever go back. I do think there is a place for virtual events, or potentially a hybrid, but I think what is lost in some of these kind of non-physical events is the networking opportunities. It's I said it. I was talking to a friend this morning, and I basically said, you sit down at a session and you lean to the guy next to you and say, "Hey man, where have you come in from? What are you doing?" Oh yeah, I know I own a construction company in kind of Michigan. Oh, wow, okay, cool. Why are you here? Well, I want to learn more about the sales process. So I think the thing is that connectivity is a struggle online, because as much as people are like, hey, connect with me, LinkedIn, do this, do that, you miss breaks. And then also just a point to collaborate, because when we're all collectively going to the event, you're bouncing off each other in mid sessions, you're having lunch with each other, you're breaking out. And obviously, I mean, time considerations, it was still in US timing. So here the sessions ran till kind of 5 in the morning. So it's not always practical during the busy week, obviously, when you're operating to sit with those live. So I think as much as they did I'd say kind of, sterling job as far as still trying to create this event, I think the inbound is very much about an experience. It's a movement, right? You've got some real kind of, because it's American, it's quite happy clappy. I don't mind saying that, because we've got some American viewers. But I think that just kind of builds that momentum and that kind of togetherness that's rough on an online event.
Yeah, look, I think there's a couple of really interesting points there. And guys, we are going to go into some of the kind of findings and insights.
Yes, we are.
So entertain us for a little bit, but essentially,
we're just reminiscing. We're just having a moan fest.
Yeah, but the point's important, Andrew, because I think they obviously couldn't hold an in-person event, right? So that's fully accepted, and nobody's really been able to hold any kind of event of any kind of magnitude over the last 6 months. We get that, or 7 months. Yeah. But I think the challenge is, and I think what you've said is really true, that online events are definitely here to stay, right? Because there's some events that you just don't need to travel to. If it's a regional event, if it's perhaps a local event, I think a lot of these things and a lot of these kinds of events, B2B events, where it's kind of maybe a sales event, where you haven't got 1,000 people attending, but you perhaps have got a couple of hundred. I think those kinds of events are very kind of replicable using virtual off conferencing sort of technology. In fact, we held we supported a rather large event which had about 1,100 members just a couple of weeks ago, where and that was a government event. That was again, I think for those kind of events, because it was local, it works. But I think you're right. The second you turn into something that is larger, where you've got people traveling from all over the world, yes, virtual events will save things, save money on flights, it will save money on hotels. But essentially, whether we were over there or whether we were watching from here, our week was still ruined because we were up most of the night watching this conference and still expected to perform the next day, right? And that doesn't work. But if and there's also, they did say, hey, we'll give you access, you can listen afterwards, but then you've got the fear of missing out and all of those things coming on. We need to know what's going on. Obviously, HubSpot's pretty important to us, but it just didn't work. And look, I mean, I think a lot of people have spoken about this. A lot of agency friends of ours who also attend the event have said exactly the same thing, that this isn't really something that kind of functions. I think if it's the first time you've ever engaged with this event, and it might have been for quite a few people who perhaps couldn't afford to travel before, right? Awesome, because I think what you got to see was the caliber of speaker and the quality of content and knowledge that was shared. What you've missed out on actually is about 90% of the event, which is all of those other bits, right? And also, there's a good chance, I think the guys in Australia who are watching it, they stayed up, and then 3 o'clock in the morning, I think once the clocks had changed somewhere in the world, something, technology broke. And so it's tough. But look, I think things like that will improve. I think there must be a ton of companies right now who are really kind of investing in innovation around large virtual conferences, where perhaps you do have a much more kind of immersive experience, even if you are kind of watching it from your laptop. But I think the reality is we don't know when these kind of events are going to come back in, right? And so I think none of us expected that heading into October we would still be perhaps the same sort of numbers that we had in March and April. So it is what it is. I think we it was a good experience, but I wouldn't recommend for anyone to go and do something similar on a large global scale event. I just don't think it worked. But anyway, cool. But moving on. That said, there were some really, really good insights.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, look, so I think what we've decided to do, guys, today is we've picked out two or three sessions each that Andrew and I did. Maybe perhaps the most kind of insightful ones, the ones that are more kind of relatable to our audience, whether you're watching in the UK or the UAE or even in the States, as Andrew said. So I think let's kind of talk about maybe one of your sessions, Andrew. Which one do you want to start with?
Yeah, I'll kick off with obviously something I think that's actually really relevant, and I was quite surprised to see on the agenda, and that's TikTok. So we obviously, TikTok feels a bit like Snap did a couple of years ago, where there was a lot of talk of it regionally, and then when we were going to global events, there was very little talk about it. So, you know, until it's almost like the US kind of picks up on some of these things a bit later. I think we've spoken about it before, and you've spoken about the conferences, that because some of these social platforms don't come with a rule book, here they're perfectly suited for that, because we're also in a very social environment in the Middle East. People are very socially active and socially together. So obviously, I was keen to watch this session, and we'll share. I think we can share with the notes. We're going to start sharing kind of growth show notes afterwards, so we can share some of these people and give them proper shout outs. But I went to a session and it was all basically about the emergence of TikTok and how kind of brands are starting to embrace the platform. Obviously, at the moment in the US, they're going through a bit of a challenge with the kind of legality of the platform, but that didn't stop them talking about it and obviously how it is being used. I think what's interesting from the kind of takeaway session is how TikTok is being used differently to other social platforms. So, you know, we know this ourselves from TikTok and kind of working with them, that from an advertising perspective, there is an ad management platform, and you can run, you know, similar ads as you would across Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. But they really try to encourage you to embrace the platform, embrace the creativity, and try to be more creative in your ad engagement. And you can definitely see that in some of the kind of samples I pulled up, like Taco Bell and McDonald's. This was more of a B2C driven kind of talk. So you know, from a B2B perspective, there's still a nervousness associating to potentially a platform that's intended for kids, right? But it was just interesting how the most successful campaigns that are run on there are the ones that have fully embraced the platform and have done these challenges. So it's kind of encouraging large volumes of user-generated content. And as much as we see that to a certain extent on, you know, Instagram and sometimes Snap with some filters and people sharing and generating their own content, it seems to be the primary or drive for TikTok as a platform. So if you're there as a brand, as an advertiser, you know, they also spoke about the virility of the platform. So what is quite unusual is that you can have 0 followers, put up a video, and basically get millions of views. It really is, you know, and it has happened. So this hasn't happened, it's happened multiple times. Bella Porch is one of the new trending stars on there. Had the most viewed video 75 million times with just a face zoom and the little quirky thing. So they said that there's a real opportunity to kind of just go viral, as it were, on the application. The algorithm is continually trying to learn, you know, what you like as a user and trying to show you this. And so I'd say that was you know, the fact that you can go on there, you don't necessarily have to build a huge following to impact your engagement. Because as we know here, you know, the kind of older social networks like Facebook, like Instagram, you know, as time has gone on and they've monetized the platform more, your organic reach has almost dropped off a cliff. So even if you have a strong following, obviously the challenge of that is still there. Snap, to a certain extent, still, obviously, because people have to choose to watch your content still, it still has a strong organic reach, and we've seen that through influencer campaigns. But TikTok definitely is a platform that you kind of need to keep your eye on in the B2C space.
Cool. And also, I think you say B2C as well, but I'm interested in how TikTok evolves once this kind of takeover is done, right? So you're talking about Oracle and Walmart, of all companies, who are basically now going to be potentially working together and who are going to own the global rights to TikTok. Which, you know, if you guys didn't know, it's a Chinese platform, but, you know, there's all sorts of kind of privacy issues and things like that.
Yeah.
And I think it'll be really interesting. Microsoft lost out, but yeah, Oracle and Walmart right now, if they take over, it will be interesting to see what kind of direction the platform kind of heads in. And Oracle, for me, more interestingly, because
I think I see what's yeah. I was going to say, what's interesting
if you just told me
that,
to name, come on,
brilliant.
God, so I mean, what I was going to say is, like, if you'd asked me to name 20 tech companies that could have potentially bought TikTok, Walmart wouldn't have been one of them. You know, it was just a point I was going to make.
No, and look, so interestingly enough as well, the deal, I don't know if you've kind of dug down into the deal, but they're not releasing any of their kind of proprietary algorithm. So, you know, that's not part of the deal, you know, which seems crazy. I mean, it's almost like just a pure access deal. Listen, you're going to have access to this audience, but we're not going to give you any of the secret sauce. Which I guess is a bit like, you know, owning a franchise in KFC, right? You get to run a KFC, but you don't get to know the blend of herbs and spices, as it were.
But I mean, in that sense, I mean, the data side of it obviously does make sense for Oracle, because you know, they've obviously got a huge database. They license this database out to ad agencies, and I mean, it's incredible the kind of data they do have. So TikTok, I guess, gives them access to the kind of data that they wouldn't normally have, right? And I think that makes it really kind of interesting from their perspective. But
I mean, the Gen Zs that they're going after, which traditionally perhaps, you know, the Gen Zs are odd as well from their. I mean, obviously, as you said, Oracle has huge amounts of data, the ability to, you know, track and target people from credit card purchases. You know, when you look at something like the users or some of the big influencers on TikTok, there's no mention of credit card, Visas, MasterCard. It's Cash App, it's Venom, it's, you know, there's a different type of audience that they can tap into. So yeah, you're right. I mean, as far as the ability to add them to that platform and start to market to that audience, no one else is going to have that data.
Yeah. No, very true. Cool. Let's move on.
What's one of your ones?
So I think the session that I quite liked was there was one that was kind of outbound versus inbound, which I felt was quite good. It's funny because two of the guys who were on that session, I think we know quite well. So it's George Thomas, who has a same name as your dad, but isn't your dad, right, Andrew?
No.
And a guy called Remington Begg, and again, a very cool guy. He's based out of Florida. But essentially what they were talking about was really that battle between sort of inbound marketing and outbound marketing, right? What works better? You know, which one's more efficient? Which one generates the best results? And it was a debate style session, which I thought was quite cool as well. That does work for that kind of interactive,
really well,
you know, digital kind of session. I think much more than a presentation. But yeah, no, it was cool. So I quite like that. And again, some of the key points around that. And, you know, I guess it's stuff that we've wrestled with as well for a while, because again, we were very much in the digital kind of inbound marketing camp. You know, a customer or a prospect is more likely to close if they're coming to you as opposed to the other way around. And, you know, in all fairness, we've really built the business on that premise. But we've often said to each other that inbound is great, but it really does need a bit of outbound to make it even better, right? You know, that whole ability to pick up the phone to somebody, you know, to make a cold call if that's what you need to do. I think that really kind of supplements that kind of inbound approach, and one without the other potentially doesn't work as well. And I think on, you know, the sort of converse to that is outbound becomes more effective when you've got some sort of inbound ingredients, right? So if you are going to pick up the phone, knowing some level or having some level of insight that that person is interested, using inbound marketing tools like HubSpot, like other tracking tools, kind of gives you that insight, right? You know, okay, that person is engaged right now. He hasn't told us that he wants to speak to us, but he clicked on this page, he's opened 6 emails, clicked on 4 links on those emails, engaged with us on social. This is someone who's ripe for a conversation. And I think it's that use of technology and that inbound technology, which again makes outbound so much more stronger. and a quite, you know, and I think I felt it was a very good session. I think they made some good points. I think you saw that one as well, right? Were there any kind
Yeah.
of
No, I think what was interesting is you know, as much as it was a kind of healthy and jolly debate, I think, you know, towards the end there, they both kind of agreed that they would just, as you said, work, you know, well with each other. And I think that as marketeers or as commercially driven people, you know, we're starting to see that firsthand. Like you said, it doesn't have to be one or the other. You can actually have a quite nice kind of coexistence that really play well with each other. And the fact that you can start to kind of pull in that information, I guess, you know, that back in the day when it was very outbound driven, there was no information available to you. So even something as basic as you know, checking out somebody's LinkedIn profile to understand, even if you're talking to the right individual within inside of an organization, right? To give you some sort of knowledge, there was none of that. So, you know, when you combined, you know, some of the tools that are available now as an outbound individual, and as you said, that intelligence piece that inbound does deliver, you're having a more qualified conversation. And I guess it's, you know, in the e-commerce terms, it's that last kilometer, right? Or last half kilometer. You know, there's only so much to a certain extent, unless you're running an e-commerce environment, if you actually have to have a conversation or, you know, qualify a call, or especially for some of the kind of enterprise level deals out there where you have to kind of negotiate and organize, you know, exactly what you're offering. That outbound piece is becoming more coming back to the party, right? I think, you know, what happens a lot in marketing is that, you know, the sexiest thing gets pulled to the front, right? And this is cool, and this is fantastic. And some of the older tech kind of gets pushed back, right? And it's, oh no, we don't need to call people, you know, we can do VR, you know?
No, you're totally right. Look, I mean, it's funny because, I mean, for some of you know, some of you don't, but we invested in a telesales operation, you know, which is very much kind of outbound, and it was purely because of that, right? We just saw that actually what we're doing is pretty effective, but it only takes us so far. You know, if we now have the ability to, you know, have some sales professionals or telesales professionals now picking up the phone and taking our market or digital marketing qualified leads and then converting them into a sales qualified lead, actually what we're producing is so much more for our clients. And it's funny, it's genuinely, I think the people who understand that more, even there's digital marketers who don't understand why we've done what we have with Pipeline.
Yeah.
When you speak to inbound marketers, they get it straight away because they know, right? They know that, okay, great. You know, we're taking people maybe 70 or 80% of the way there, but we're not taking them 90 to 95. And that's really where we need to get to. But no, cool. But Angie, you mentioned LinkedIn, and I'm guessing there was quite a few kind of LinkedIn sessions that were of value during a couple of days.
Yeah, it was. I mean, that there's kind of the whole social selling scene, and how people are changing their prospecting activity. You know, you got a lot of. So obviously, we said it's a global event, but it's quite US centric. So similar to, you know, this part of the world, there's still a lot of premise-based sales, right? You know, what do I mean by that? I mean, literally guys getting on the road, knocking on doors, you know, meeting people, shaking hands, having coffee, what would almost ordinarily seem like an old school sales environment. And obviously, you know, with the rise of COVID, that's disappeared, right? So there's no ability to, you know, not only go and knock on doors, but then meet people, right? So it's all kind of transitioned online. So there was some really good sessions, and for me, it kind of split between two areas. So first and foremost, it was the social selling and using a platform like LinkedIn and their platform Sales Navigator to prospect. So you can't kind of, you know, go and knock on doors. So what can you do, right? So, you know, looking at, you know, opportunities using something like Sales Navigator or even the bare minimum of LinkedIn to identify prospects, right? And engage in an outbound program. But what was quite interesting is there was a few sessions where they were saying that, you know, you can't do, and we've spoken about this before, you can't just connect with someone and sell to them straight away, right? It's not the way it works. It doesn't feel comfortable online. It doesn't feel comfortable in a real environment, but online it feels even worse, right? As far as, connect with someone, and we see it all the time. Connect with you on LinkedIn. Hey man, I just want to sell something. So what was interesting is what they were talking about is a kind of a wine and dine approach. So engage with the prospect, you know, perhaps comment on some posts, see if you can interact with them for a period of time before you kind of go after the jugular. Now, that prospect usually knows what's going on. People aren't stupid, but basically it's just an etiquette, right? So it's about moving etiquette and understanding online etiquette and kind of moving. So I thought that was interesting on how that approach was. Also, the use of video. So because you're not able to, show personality, which is obviously, a lot of the time a big part of selling and interacting and getting on with someone, it was using video tools. We've spoken about like Vidyard in the past, 23, and that's that first initial interaction. So once you do feel confident enough to introduce yourself and, just in that LinkedIn environment or over email, use video, right? There's a much bigger response rate on kind of people coming back to you. You have the ability to actually track as well and see if people have watched your video, shared your video. So it gives you kind of some insights of their interest level as well. And the open rates are higher, and obviously the kind of watches are higher as well. So I thought that was a good insight, that if you are going to kind of reach out to people through social selling, make sure that you do that bit of wine and dine, and you are using different tools to communicate with them. Yeah.
Yeah, I was actually going to say, it's been quite interesting because I've rather than even people selling like products or services, I've started to see job seekers using the same sort of approach. So obviously we know that, I think any of us are spending any level of time on LinkedIn at the moment is just seeing how many people are kind of looking for work at the moment. Yeah. And I've started to see a bit of that kind of softer approach, rather than normally I'd get maybe 20 CVs a day coming in through LinkedIn. I'm starting to see people almost trying to nurture me and kind of warm me up, and I've got no issues with that. It just shows that, okay, there's a little bit of tact there. But yeah, I think it's the right approach. I mean, look, we're all human and we want to kind of, not be immediately sold to, but I don't think many of us mind being sold to as well, right?
No, yeah. The salesman in me likes a pitch, right? I like to listen to a pitch and understand what someone's offering. I think, you said it there. There's that, it's personalization. So a lot of it is around personalizing the messaging, as opposed to just a blanket copy paste, which you can see, it still get it. Like a copy paste, what they've done is they've just changed your name, told them what they're selling, right? So aside from that, taking the extra time and the extra care just to kind of personalize the approach, as you said, just shows that you care. And it's fine. I think we're all grown ups. You may care about 100 people that day, right? But you still taking the time to kind of learn a bit about the business or potentially what the opportunity is. And I had a really interesting conversation with somebody that was, the approach was all wrong. They were basically talking about the fact that we can, reduce this, reduce that. You can remove this, remove that. I said, hold on a minute, we don't need to do that. And he was like, no, I'm talking about click fraud. I can help with click fraud. I was like, okay, great, but open with that. Don't talk about how we're going to remove this. And it was just, I think the thing is, again, there's a lot of people that reach out without even reading a company profile, without even understanding the website, going to it. So that was the first thing. And then look, the second thing was linked to that. And it was just that whole, social selling approach, but more importantly, sales meeting. So, how now should you conduct an online sales meeting, right? We've spoken about this before. The very first time that kind of COVID started to hit and meetings started to disappear and we had to pitch to a client, we had one of those discovery meetings. It was challenging, right? And that's basically the consensus across the board. It's been challenging for everyone. So, if you're in sales, obviously you do have certain triggers, right? So certain visual triggers, when you meet someone, you're perhaps kind of just from physical space. What does the office look like? What do some of the cars look like parked outside? You meet someone wearing cufflinks, what watch, shoes. There's kind of little visual triggers that you pick up over the year that basically help you understand, the individual that you're talking to, right? And then how they present themselves. Now, obviously, in this environment, a lot of the time, people's videos are off, sound quality is bad, right? So you're already impaired from day one. So it was interesting to hear how people were approaching it. So first and foremost, there's a real encouragement in any kind of meeting to, softly encourage people to have their video on if they don't have their video on. Some organizations just have a camera on policy, so they won't meet you unless your camera's on, which I thought was quite hardcore. But what's interesting is they said straight away you have like a visual connection, right? So you're able to kind of connect. And what they were saying was that no one cares that your cat's running across in front of you or kids are running around in the background, because it's the same for everyone, right? It's not, it's basically, it doesn't matter. You know, some people they have connectivity issues, but everyone's going through the same thing. So, you know, try not to kind of be nervous about the fact that you're going to be on camera. So there was that. There was also talk into the camera. So when you're talking to someone so they can see you, and then dart down to the individual, then dart back to that. And one thing that I thought was quite interesting, and you kind of touched upon it just there when we were talking about the George Thomas and Reddington session, try not to have a real deck heavy, got to be careful I say that, meeting, right? So what you don't want is, you don't want death by PowerPoint anyway, but you definitely don't want death by PowerPoint over a Zoom meeting. So, you know, people want to see you, they want to see you talk and then kind of bounce between the two. Because again, you know, you switch on a deck, the camera goes off, people put it on mute, and you kind of lose that interest. So they said, if you do have something to present, that's fine, but just make it more interactive. So instead of kind of perhaps when you're in an office previously, and you may have a presentation behind you, you can see visual triggers, you can see people, what they're up to. You don't have that online. So just reach out to the audience. So stop the presentation. Hey guys, you got any questions? Try to make it more interactive. So I think that was good advice from an online kind of sales meeting or online pitch perspective. There was some good takeaways from the sessions.
Yeah, cool. No, it makes total sense. Cool. Shall we move on to the next one?
Yeah. What was your next one? I think we both did this session, but you got some real stats that you've got to run through.
Yeah. So actually, funnily enough, it goes kind of hand in hand with something that you mentioned earlier about, you know, some of the old technology gets lost whenever something new happens, and this session was really kind of just focused on email, and literally, I think the first title or the first page within this was kind of like a text-heavy presentation, but it was pretty fast and interactive, so it was good fun. But the first kind of big point that was made was that email's cool again. You know, it was like a woohoo kind of moment. You know, and it's like it hasn't been cool for probably about 10 years, but all of a sudden now it's cool. And then the rest of the presentation was really kind of talking about some of the stats, and I thought that was really interesting. So, just for a bit of context, the guy who was talking runs an email marketing business, but essentially had huge volumes of data that he was using for insights. And so the kind of the data set he was looking at was based on 200 million emails. So that's a lot of emails. A lot. But that was 200 emails that were sent in March, so March this year, and then basically it was comparison between emails that were sent out in August, right? So you're talking about very, very much kind of early stages of COVID. It wasn't really impacting everyone, right? Especially not in the Western world, compared to August when everyone was impacted. And so 200 emails based on that. And I'll read out some of the kind of cool stats based around this. But one of the things he said was that every single person is now spending more time inside their email inbox than they were in March. So in August, that figure was up substantially, right? Any guesses as to how much more time we're spending in our email inbox, Andrew? Let's quiz.
I mean, so I've already forgotten the stat, but just from my own personal experience, I mean, it has to be at least, kind of 50% more time, right? I mean, just at least that.
Okay, so on average, again, across all these different email inboxes, people are spending 22% more time in their inbox now than they were 6 months ago. I mean, even that's substantial, because I mean, most of us are spending a couple of hours a day already in there. Now, if you're spending 20% more time, I mean, that's huge, right? But during that time, it's not just about us spending more time in our email inboxes. Open rates have also gone higher. And I think that's interesting. So, and that was across sort of B2B and across B2C as well, right? So from B2B perspective, email open rates are up 16%. Okay, so
Wow,
we're no
that's huge.
longer kind of ignoring emails. It is huge, right? From
Yeah.
a B2C perspective, it's even higher. So 25%. So now, again, that's significant, right? So if you imagine,
Massive. Yeah.
again, that across that many number of emails, that's it. I mean, these numbers are just not small. Newsletters. So, I mean, I'm subscribed to quite a lot of newsletters. I don't know, are you, Andrew?
Yeah, no, I am. Yeah, I am.
Are you opening more newsletters now than what you were previously? Or the same,
Yeah, I
maybe?
mean, I had a good GDPR clean out when that whole came through and said, "Do you want to still subscribe to my newsletter?" So I kind of had a good clean out as far as the ones that I was looking at. But yeah, I mean, going back to obviously spending more time in your inbox and just focusing more, I guess, on what's coming through. I'm definitely kind of opening and clicking and reading more.
Reading more. Okay, so again, across the board, newsletter open rates are up by 19%, right? Which is again huge. I mean, these aren't small.
Digit.
Normally,
Yeah.
if you're an email marketer, guys, for a bit of context, you celebrate a 1 or 2% increase.
Yeah, exactly.
19 is 19 substantial. I mean, it's off the charts almost, right?
Yeah.
But cool. On the other side of it, email signups. So have you signed up for more things since you've been locked down?
Yeah, from a webinar perspective, obviously signing up for webinars, and then also just signing up for kind of different downloadable guides, newsletters. I mean, just to kind of keep in the know, as it were.
Yeah. Do you want to take a stab at how much this has increased?
You've clearly seen that I'm bad at numbers anyway, but I'll say we've got double digits. So let's say 15%. Let's go 15%.
Right. So newsletter or email signups are up by 40%. Right. So again, I mean, just massive. So guys, again, if you're not giving people an opportunity to subscribe to your content, if you're not hosting kind of events or webinars or got a blog or anything that offers any kind of subscription, change that, because I mean, people are ready now to kind of, want more emails and want more content, which is probably the first time we've ever said that, for many years actually. Other things which I think were quite cool. So days of the week. So now I'll tell a local story here, and then we'll look at maybe how that's changed. But when we're sending out newsletters from an Alexa perspective, especially if we're trying to target maybe business leaders, CEOs, the types of people that have tuned in today, for perhaps, we would normally send out these mailers on a Friday morning, right? And the first time we did that as a test, it was mind blowing, because literally we had a huge increase in open rates, click-through rates. And then we just figured out that Friday morning, people don't have to go to the office. They've got a bit of time. They've got a cup of coffee in their hand. They're still on their phones, but they're quite ready to kind of, read perhaps a long email. And most of the emails I send are really long. So, Fridays and weekend tendencies. Now that's a global thing. So a lot of people do this. So in the US, for example, people wait until sort of Saturday and Sunday to send out emails. Post-COVID, that's changed. So now email open rates are kind of significantly lower on a weekend and much higher throughout the week. And even on a Monday morning, or perhaps a Sunday morning, which is our equivalent, email open rates are at an all-time high. So again, it's not one of them where I've got to be in the office. I've got a bunch of internal meetings, first day of the week. Now people are getting up maybe a little bit earlier, going through their inboxes, and then having these kind of virtual Zoom meetings. So I think when you look at stuff like that, a byproduct of us not having to spend so much time in our car is we're spending more time in our email inbox. And I don't know which one's better, but I mean, there's got to be a correlation to that, right? Because you're not just running from event to event. You've actually got time to kind of do these things. Yeah. So yeah, that was quite cool. I've got some other insights. Subject lines. So again, if we're talking about, especially to you guys who are sending out emails, there's always been this kind of tendency, and you read these email marketing rule books and they turn around and say, do you know what? Get whatever subject line you need to get within 20 characters, right? And if you get it in 20 characters, your open rates are going to be higher than if it's anything more. One of the bits of data that blew my mind was that companies that have just ignored this and have said, actually, we're going to focus on character count of over 60 or 65 characters. So forget about 20, but let's actually just go crazy on these subject lines. They've had a 19% increase in open rates compared to some of these shorter subject lines, which again, it's just like nuts, right? It's almost like these subject lines don't even fit within that screen, but because they don't fit, people are now having a little bit more time to read, and it's these milliseconds of activity which are just having an impact. So I felt that was pretty cool. Some more stuff. So again, if you've got any content that's related to the current situation, people are more likely to open those emails. So if you are addressing COVID-19, if you are kind of addressing, the pandemic, however it is that you kind of phrase it, whatever you use with, in terms of those words within the subject line, 48% higher open rates whenever you are kind of mentioning something that's real that people are kind of suffering or experiencing right now. So I thought that was pretty cool. A couple of other bits and some words. So words within the subject line, if you're using words like urgent, 38% increase. If you're using words like meeting, there's been like a 12% decrease. Nobody wants to meet. And so people aren't even opening those kinds of emails. So don't use the word meeting. Okay. What people are saying and what the data shows is show urgency, right? If you want someone to click on that email, make it make them feel as if they've got to prioritize opening that mail. So I think that's pretty cool. But again, that's like a 38% increase if you're using words like urgent. And then there's some cool stuff, and I kind of we test stuff a lot, and those of you who receive our emails know that we test things like emojis and different kind of spelling and capitalization and all that kind of stuff. And again, all the data that was being shared was that just make your subject lines more quirky. So if we look at things like exaggeration of spelling, I think what we should have done, Andrew, now thinking about this, is I probably should have done 2 different versions, one with Vegas and then one with Vegas or something like that, we're about 6 A's or something, I don't know. Yeah. But apparently exaggeration in spelling has an 18% increase, will increase your open rates by 18%. Right? Which again, it just stands out. And you're trying to catch eyeballs.
That must have been a tough one for you to swallow though, with you are the grammar police. So exaggeration in spelling, that must have killed you.
No, but as I'm getting kind of older and younger at the same time, I'm kind of down with all this stuff, mate. And spending my Saturdays as I do now, recording podcasts with my kids is opening my eyes to a whole level of stuff. So just
because you said the word down means that you're old, yeah? Just to let you know.
Yeah. But it's fine, they're not listening. I'm not worried about you. I'm not worried about you giving me any grief for that. It's more my kids. But anyway, final other bits. Emojis.
Yeah.
Who uses emojis in emails, right? So
you now.
And again, I do. Like I love it, right? And because I have measured it, and so it was like I know this data when he was talking about it. But B2B emails are being opened at 14% more when they include an emoji in the subject line than when they don't. And when we talk about B2C, so whether it's e-commerce or whether it's products or whatever it is, at 17%. So if you want to increase, your open rates by a fifth, literally put some sort of emoji in there. Try to be sort of culturally sensitive. Sometimes that doesn't increase open rates, as we saw with my fruit machine emoji yesterday. But that's all right. This is how we learn. But I think the whole key to this, and again, how that speaker left it was send more emails, right? Because for the first time, people are open to receiving emails. They're spending more time in their inboxes. But if you're sending emails, make sure they're not boring. Make sure that they catch their eye catching in terms of subject lines. Make sure there's some thought that's gone into it. And actually on the back of it, you should do much better out of it. And look, in all fairness, we've seen that across the board. We've seen the email rates as high as 35% with some campaigns, which is unheard of. So yeah, I mean, I think a really kind of good session, and yeah, I just loved it. Obviously, I love data, so that kind of helped.
No,
But
no, I
yeah,
think also that we've often said that, you know, that kind of email marketing is the ugly stepchild, and it kind of gets forgotten and it's put in a corner. And I think companies that have continued to communicate with their database, or, you know, their customers or prospects through email, have obviously seen the results, the positive results on the back of that. Because for sure, I think there is a heightened sensitivity either to, you know, data, or just kind of, you know, burying yourself, as you said, in your inbox. You know, you're kind of a lot more, you know, on top of it, and kind of saying, okay, yeah, what is this? And there's more, you're getting more communication through that space. So when you're signing up for these, you know, these webinars or these downloadable guides or anything like that, you want to make sure that you're on top of it. So you are kind of seeing that. And there's a lot of subscriptions now that people have moved online from obviously physical activity. So, you know, I think that we're just all more aware of our inbox. And that goes, like you said, for B2B to B2C. I mean, a lot more people are doing kind of online deliveries. A lot more people are doing home delivery, restaurants, you know, and all of this communication is, yeah, not only sent to you via SMS, sometimes through the app, but they always send you an email, right? Bang, here's the email, here's the email. Yeah. This is kind of, you know, where your bucket of KFC is at the moment.
Yeah, and exactly right. I mean, you know, maybe not exactly KFC, but you know what I mean. I think the point is don't be afraid to send emails. And you know, it's weird. I still speak to companies, and they obsess over unsubscribes, and they're like, oh, you know, like we had, you know, 6 people unsubscribe from our last newsletter. You know, and I'm like, good, right?
Good.
Like they've taken space in your database. Don't worry about it. You know, they're unsubscribing because they're not interested in working with you or listening to what you've got to say. You know, but your database has grown by 120 in that time. You know, there's no issues with it. And I think once people, again, I wouldn't even report on unsubscribes. Like genuinely, I think if someone was running campaigns for us, the last metric I'd care about would be unsubscribes, because for me, look, we are who we are, and as long as the messaging and the content is true to who we are as a business, if 10% of those people want to unsubscribe, it's fine. You know, that's their prerogative, right? It doesn't make any difference, because potentially they're not going to work with you anyway. So cool. I think let's move on, because a few minutes left. Andrew, let's talk about HubSpot itself, because I know we've got some HubSpots listening to us right now. HubSpot announced some changes. I mean, this is normally the time of year when they do announce kind of new updates to the software, licensing updates and new product updates. Key takeaways from that, Andrew, from your side?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things, you know, was probably one of the most casual things. So there's, with the move for HubSpot into more of a enterprise layer environment. So they've really kind of, you know, grown up, I'd say, over the last couple of years, where, you know, they're obviously, you know, grassroots were solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, then kind of SMEs, then building up mid-size. But obviously they started to go after enterprise layer clients, you know, 18 months ago with some of the kind of enterprise layer licensing. And there was always a bit of a kind of a sticking point with marketing contacts. So if you look at the other kind of enterprise layer solutions on the market, you know, when companies wanted to engage with them, they weren't charged per contact, for example. You know, even if you didn't kind of market to those individuals in the HubSpot world, you were charged for them. So the big shift, and it was very casual by Dharmesh, it literally was like a one-liner, is where they've kind of re-looked at this now. So from a contacts perspective, you know, they're not going to charge you unless you actually market to that contact. So I think that's huge. You know, it was said super casually, I guess, because obviously there are some enterprise clients. We've got some ourselves that kind of have paid for those contacts, and we see how that shakes down in the next few weeks here. But I think that's you know, a big takeaway, like a big announcement, but under their breath, which was odd. I get the reason why, but yeah, that was a big one.
It was Yeah, perhaps so their shareholders didn't hear them. I don't know. It was weird. The this is cost saving. Okay, so this is look.
Yes.
So I think it fits from a COVID perspective. I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of industries that would love to use HubSpot, but just can't because of that contact issue. So there's
Yeah.
been hotel groups. I mean, HubSpot for hotels would just be a phenomenal tool, right? It would literally having HubSpot in that industry would just mean that every hotel could market like Booking.com or Expedia.
Exactly.
Okay,
Revolutionize.
but hotels with 500 rooms potentially have 500 guests a night. Maybe not now, but you know, in the good times. 500 guests a night is 3,500 people a week, right? So that's 3,500 contacts you're creating a week. Over a year, you're talking at what, 175,000 contacts?
Yeah, easy.
And
that's without Wi-Fi, outlets, people coming in the lobby, connecting,
right, exactly,
all adding to your database, right?
Yeah. So your potential data size is what, 300, 400,000 contacts for maybe a 500 room hotel. And those numbers just don't make sense, right? It just doesn't balance out. And so in the past, we've had many people who are very keen on using it for their hotels, but the second we start to map out our contacts, it becomes a bit of a stumbling block. This now solves that problem, right? It now means that, okay, look, you only want to market to those 5,000, but still keep, that 300,000 on your database. No issues. You're not going to pay for those, 295,000 people. Just pay for the 5,000, and I think that's such a big change. So yeah, it was bizarre that they didn't make a lot more of it. But yeah, I mean, there's other kind of things at play. HubSpot needed to make that change. I think they're now, every review and rating rates them above Salesforce, rates them above any competitor from a usability perspective and from a product perspective. This felt a little bit childish in terms of how that pricing model was before, and I think this now means they've grown up. So definitely. I quite like it. Very, very, very pleased with that.
Yeah. I mean, look, there was some other, I guess. I think what we're probably going to do is we'll probably have a HubSpot session, because obviously they've enhanced the kind of object handling in sales enterprise as well, which I think is going to be beneficial for the real estate industry. So there's definitely been some challenges from real estate where you were not able to kind of individualize contact data. So maybe a prospect that's interested in a particular area or something like that. So I think that's going to help. And obviously there's some updates to the reporting, and how obviously you can perform the enhanced reports. But I think it will be good to probably jump on because we've got some HubSpotters I can see in the audience to kind of do a breakout session, perhaps in the next coming weeks, where we take a bit of a deeper dive into that. Was there anything else for you that you felt kind of stood out?
No, I think this kind of almost goes back to the event itself, where normally we'd end up having, I think they've held a lot back, if I'm honest with you. So, there's normally, 25,000 people engaged by the founders of HubSpot when they're kind of announcing kind of new directions and new updates and things like that. And I just felt they probably didn't have the platform to do that this time. So I'm expecting a lot more kind of updates and announcements as well. I think one more thing, we'll be, it's probably a good time to mention that, again, moving an event from sort of the real world to virtual. I think as some of you guys know, Nexa look after HubSpot's official HubSpot user groups here. So essentially, we run these kind of quarterly events on HubSpot's behalf. And they've been on hold for the last few months as we were trying to figure out what was going on around us, and HubSpot were trying to figure some stuff out. But we've got our first HubSpot user group for a while. It's going to be at some point next week. We're going to have a special guest as well, Andrew. So it's going to be one of the senior bods up in HubSpot Dublin, a guy called Ed Barrett, and Ed's very keen to kind of join us on our kind of HubSpot user group. So he'll be sharing some kind of insights and some updates and things like that as well. So if you guys have got any kind of specific interest in kind of learning more about HubSpot, learning more about what's going on, something new kind of sales techniques and tactics, just we'll send a mail out to you anyway. But yeah, it'll be good for you guys to kind of potentially join that. And again, it will be a kind of virtual event. but yeah, with some special guests hopefully. So yeah, we'll keep you informed of that.
Fantastic. Good news.
Cool. So guys, I think that's it for today. Bang on the hour. Getting good at this now. So taking 21 episodes, but we're now on time. Where can people find us if they want to kind of tune in or share this with their friends? Andrew?
That's you can find us on the Digital Nexer. That's how it's framed on YouTube. You can watch the Digital Growth Show on there. You can tune into the show, obviously, on the Nexer website. And we've also now packaged it up as a podcast. So the podcast goes out weekly as well. So you can kind of listen to your heart's content on there as well. And as always, you can connect with myself and Amit on LinkedIn. Happy to connect, happy to have a conversation, jump on a Zoom, have a virtual coffee, as it were. So yeah, please feel free to reach out.
Awesome. And I think that's it. And I guess last but not least, because I've got about 10 seconds, it's Q4 next week. So I just want to kind of wish everyone a happy Q4, because I'm hoping it's much happier than Q1, Q2, and Q3 have been. So yeah, let's hope this last sort of quarter of the year finishes a lot brighter for many of us. So yeah, cool. Definitely. I think that's it, guys. So thanks for tuning in. Thanks for your comments. We've had a couple that come in, and guys, we'll see you next week. All right, take care.
Yeah, next week. Thanks, guys. Bye.